F***ck off. Soldiers tried choking her in changing room, unaware of her 20 years as a Navy SEAL. The air in the changing room tasted like dust, sweat, and ego, the kind that grows in men who think rank makes them untouchable. They didn't know the woman they cornered had survived things their nightmares wouldn't dare picture. What happened next would shatter their confidence and reveal a truth buried for 20 years. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, humming like an old engine struggling to stay alive. Master Chief Elena Ward stood perfectly still, boots planted, shoulders square, as Staff Sergeant Cole Riley pressed her against the cold metal lockers. His hands wrapped around her throat with the careless confidence of a man used to winning every fight before it began. His breath reeked of bitterness and cheap whiskey, his anger sharp enough to burn through the stale air. 40 pounds of pressure, maybe a bit more, enough to make a point. But Elena's pulse didn't change. 58 beats per minute. The same steady rhythm that carried her through 2 decades of missions she could never speak of. Through black site extractions in Eastern Europe. Through drowning simulations in Coronado. Through watching her husband's flag-draped coffin lower into the earth she had bled to defend. The other soldiers stood in a loose half-circle. Some pretending not to watch. Some watching too closely. They thought she was a tech advisor. A quiet Navy woman assigned to communications. They had no idea that the last man who had grabbed her like this had died 11 seconds later with a crushed windpipe. Today they were about to learn. 48 hours earlier, the desert sun smothered Fort Limestone, a dust-bitten army installation carved into the Colorado plains. The wind carried the smell of sand and diesel, pushing against the fences like something alive. Elena arrived in an unmarked tan SUV, her duffel across her lap, her eyes scanning every shadow out of habit, not fear. The gate guard checked her ID 3 times before waving her in, jaw tight, posture stiff. Navy Master Chief outranking half the men on base? Suspicious. A woman older than most of them, with calm eyes that felt like they could read minds? Unsettling. Inside, the base pulsed with noise, boots on pavement, orders being barked, metal clanging against metal. Elena walked with controlled efficiency. Not fast, not slow. Just economical, as if every movement was designed to conserve something valuable inside her. She kept her file tucked under one arm. Technical advisor, systems integration. A clean, harmless cover. Exactly what she needed. No one here knew she once ran missions under a name whispered like a ghost story. Spectre. No one knew she had retired after losing her husband, Captain Daniel Ward, in a covert ambush no news outlet ever mentioned. She thought the desert would be quiet. She thought she could disappear here. She was wrong. General Mason Hawthorne's office smelled of stale coffee and decades of exhaustion. Papers were stacked in mountains on his desk. Strategies, reports, problems waiting for solutions that never came. He looked up as Elena knocked once and entered, spine straight, presence calm. "Master Chief Ward," he said, voice gravel and memory. "Sit." She did, hands folded, face unreadable. He held her file between 2 fingers like it offended him. "This," he said, shaking it once, "is the thinnest pile of bullshit I've seen in 35 years. Elena didn't blink. "You don't send a Master Chief with 20 years in to repair radios." "Sir," she replied softly, "that is my assignment." "Not buying it." His eyes narrowed. "Your gait. Your posture. Your silence. Your devgru. Or you were." The word hung in the air like a ghost. Elena inhaled once, slow. "My role is security assessment, sir. Penetration testing. I find vulnerabilities. I report them. Then I disappear." He studied her, then leaned back. "You disappeared once before." Daniel's name stayed unspoken, but the weight of it filled the room. Her jaw tightened. "Just barely." 18 months, Elena whispered. "Then I'm done." Hawthorne nodded. "You won't be invisible here, Ward. Not with these boys." He was more right than he knew. Her room was barely bigger than a storage closet, 8 feet by 10, metal bunk, metal desk, metal everything. To anyone else, it would feel suffocating. To Elena, it felt familiar. Predictable. Safe. Chaos got people killed. Order kept them alive. She unpacked with military precision. Uniforms first, folded so sharply the edges could cut. Next, her equipment. Cleaning kit, tools, notebook. She never brought weapons onto base unless ordered. Old habits clashed with new rules. Then came the personal items. A framed photo of Daniel. His grin lopsided. His eyes crinkled like he found the world funnier than it deserved. He died 2 weeks before their 20th anniversary. Elena hadn't laughed since. She placed him exactly in the center of the desk. "Hey, love," she whispered. "I'm trying." Next, a coin, her old team's trident emblem. SEAL Team 6, Ghost Unit. Retired. Buried. Unspoken. Last, the notebook. She opened it to the inside cover, fingers brushing the page like a ritual. There were 142 small notches cut into the leather. Each one a life taken to save another. She didn't feel pride. She didn't feel shame. Only memory. Today she was just a tech advisor. Tomorrow, her past would knock on the door. The gym smelled like rubber mats and bravado. Young soldiers lifted weights too heavy for their joints, grunting like they were trying to impress God himself. When Elena walked in, the noise changed. Subtle at first, then sharp, like a pack noticing something unfamiliar. 3 soldiers stood by the lockers. Cole Riley, Staff Sergeant, reputation for fighting more than thinking. Merrick Dunn, the quiet one with a cruel streak. Jordan Price, the one who laughed at everything, even when he shouldn't. They watched her. Not with curiosity. With challenge. Riley smirked. "Didn't know we were letting Navy grandmas in here." Price snorted. "Bet she types reports real fast though." Elena ignored them, opening her locker, movements precise. Predictable. Non-threatening. She had no interest in conflict. Not anymore. But men like Riley mistook calm for weakness. "Hey," he said louder. "I'm talking to you." Elena didn't turn. "No need," she said quietly. "I heard you the first time." The room froze. A low warning. Not submissive, controlled. Riley stepped closer, shadow swallowing hers. He didn't know it yet, but in less than 2 minutes, his world would fracture. Riley's boots scraped the floor as he stepped right into Elena's space. His breath hot with the stink of someone who'd skipped sleep, but not whiskey. Price leaned against the lockers, waiting for entertainment. Dunn crossed his arms, silent but alert, eyes narrowed like he was already calculating how far this could go. Elena kept her gaze on the locker, refusing to offer them the reaction they wanted. Calm was an armor she had learned to wear long before she ever touched a uniform. Calm kept her alive. Calm meant control. Riley tapped the metal above her head. "When someone talks to you, you answer. That's how it works here." Elena spoke without looking up. "That's not how it works anywhere I've been." Price grinned. "Where's that, Grandma?" "A library." Riley reached out, grabbed her elbow, fingers digging into the fabric of her sleeve. Elena's muscles tightened instinctively, but she didn't move. Not yet. Her heartbeat stayed steady. Predictable. Controlled. She could end this in 3 seconds. But that's not who she wanted to be anymore. Riley didn't see the silent warning in her stillness. He only saw a woman he thought couldn't fight back. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The moment Riley shoved her back against the lockers, the entire room shifted. Dunn straightened. Price's smirk faded into something uncertain. The clang of metal echoed through the gym as Riley's hands closed around Elena's throat, thumbs positioned with practiced cruelty, fingers digging into old scars. The pressure increased. 40 pounds. 45. A soldier's arrogance wrapped around a warrior's silence. Elena didn't gasp. Didn't claw. Didn't even blink. Her pulse remained at 58 beats per minute, steady as the cadence of boots she'd marched beside for 20 years. She had fought in places these boys thought existed only in training drills. She had dragged teammates out of burning vehicles, stitched her own wounds, survived nights where even the sky felt hostile. Riley pressed harder. "Say something," he growled. "Tell me not to touch you." "Why?" she murmured. "You wouldn't listen." The security camera's red light blinked steadily in the corner. Recording. Timestamping. Documenting. Dunn shifted nervously. "Cole, there's a camera." Riley laughed, breath sour. "Like anyone cares. She's nothing." Elena's eyes lifted, calm, still, dangerous. She wasn't nothing. She was the last woman on Earth they should have laid hands on. And the next seconds would prove it. Riley tightened his grip, expecting panic. Tears. Begging. Instead, Elena tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was a malfunctioning piece of equipment she had to diagnose before discarding. "You done?" she asked quietly, voice thin but steady through the pressure. Riley froze. Not because of her words, because of her eyes. There was no fear in them. No trembling. Only a terrifying patience. Price swallowed. "Dude, she's not fighting you." "That's because she can't," Riley spat. "No," Elena whispered, "because I don't want to hurt you." A cold ripple moved through the room. Dunn took an involuntary step back. Riley scoffed. "You? Hurt me? Lady, you can't even breathe." Elena exhaled, slow, deliberate. "I don't need breath to end this." And then, for the first time, Riley hesitated. Just one heartbeat. Just one falter in his confidence. Elena saw it, calculated it. She had been trained to read micro-expressions, the tiny betrayals of fear, ego, pain. Riley's eyes gave away what his grip tried to hide. He wasn't in control. He was pretending. She'd seen stronger men break faster. She'd killed stronger men in darker rooms. But she didn't want to be that weapon anymore. Until he forced her hand. When Elena finally moved, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't anything like the movies these boys wish their lives resembled. It was precise, silent, efficient. Exactly 3 seconds. Second 1 asterisk. Her left hand rose, pinching the nerve between Riley's thumb and forefinger. Hard enough to force his grip open, not hard enough to break anything. Pain shot up his arm. He gasped, surprised. Second 2 asterisk. She stepped to the side, redirecting his momentum. Her elbow pressed into his sternum, not crushing, but controlling. His breath punched out of him in a startled grunt. Second 3 asterisk. She released him gently, so gently it humiliated him more than any strike would have. Riley stumbled backward, hitting the bench behind him, eyes wide, ego shattered in slow motion. Elena didn't posture, didn't gloat, didn't even raise her voice. She simply said, "Walk away." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Price stared at her like she'd just split the floor open. Dunn's expression twisted, respect mixed with fear. Riley's face flushed a deep, furious red. He'd been handled, no, dismissed, like a child who touched a hot stove. He lunged. This time, without thinking. Elena closed her eyes once, almost sad. "Don't," she whispered. But he was already too far gone. Riley swung blindly, pride guiding his fists more than skill. Elena slid sideways, letting his punch hit nothing but stale air. She didn't strike back. She didn't need to. Every movement she made was controlled, economical, like a memory her muscles had never forgotten. Dunn yelled, "Cole, stop. You're gonna get written up." But Riley wasn't listening. Humiliation mixed with anger, twisting him into something reckless. He rushed her again. This time, Elena caught his wrist before it connected. Her grip tightened, just enough to halt him, never enough to break. Her voice dropped low, heavy with a truth she hadn't spoken aloud in years. 20 years, she said. Navy SEAL. DevGru. Ghost Unit. Price's jaw unhinged. Dunn looked like he'd seen a myth walk out of a history book. Riley froze completely. Elena released him, stepping back. "If I hurt you, it won't be in self-defense. It'll be muscle memory." Silence swallowed the room. Price whispered, "You're lying." Elena turned her head slightly, letting the weight of her past fill the air around her. If I were lying, he'd be on the ground. The truth rippled through them like a shockwave. None of them had been prepared for the quiet woman they tried to choke, to be the deadliest person on base. Her words hit the floor like a dropped grenade. The major, the security officers, even the two women who now stood beside her, everyone froze. For a heartbeat, the only sound in the room was the hum of the fluorescent lights. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, "Ma'am," the major finally managed, voice shaking, "why you mean that strike? The one classified as—" "Yes," she said softly, but her voice carried more authority than every rank in that room combined. "I built the profile. I submitted the risk assessment. I greenlit the window. If you used it today, then you used a piece of my work." Her calm tone made the moment even heavier. The soldiers looked at her as if she were someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone far above them. The two women glanced at each other, and for the first time, they saw her not as a frightened girl in a changing room, but as a weapon wrapped in warmth and restraint. The major swallowed. His posture straightened without him even realizing. "Specialist. We didn't know," he said shakily. "We had no idea who you were." She gave him a tired smile. "That's the thing about people like me," she said. "If you know who we are, we've already failed." And the room stayed silent, as if the walls themselves were trying to understand who they had almost crushed. The major, still stunned, asked the question everyone else was too scared to voice. "If you were this important, why did you leave?" Her eyes softened, not from weakness, but from memories she'd buried so deep they only resurfaced when dragged out by force. "Because once you've seen enough," she said quietly, "you stop wanting to be strong. You just want to be human again." She looked at her trembling hands, the same hands once trained to guide missions with lethal precision, hands that now picked groceries, pet stray cats, and watered tiny plants on her window sill. "I left because I wanted a life," she continued. "A small one. A peaceful one. One where nobody screamed orders. One where I could hear birds instead of drones." The two women nodded, tears forming. "And I thought," she added, a faint smile touching her lips, "that choosing quiet made me weaker. But after today, I think choosing quiet actually took more courage." The major lowered his head, ashamed. The soldiers avoided her eyes, all except the one who had choked her. He stared at her with pure guilt, realizing he had almost harmed someone his entire force depended on without even knowing. "This was supposed to be a routine check," the major whispered. "We never imagined." She finished the sentence for him. "You never imagined someone valuable could look like me." That truth hit them harder than any weapon ever could. Minutes passed, but no one dared to leave. She turned to the major. "Sir, your operation succeeded. That's all that matters. There's no need for an investigation." His eyebrows knitted. "Specialist, protocol requires." "Protocol didn't save me today," she said, cutting him off gently. "People did." Her eyes shifted toward the two women who had helped her. They straightened proudly, but also with humility. They weren't heroes, but they had acted like humans. She stepped toward them. "You too," she said softly, "did something more valuable than any classified strike I've ever helped authorize." They looked confused. "What did we do?" one whispered. "You cared," she replied. Those two simple words broke them. Their eyes filled with tears because, in a room full of ranks, badges, and power, caring had been the rarest and bravest act. The major watched silently. He realized the entire fiasco wasn't about misidentification or protocol failure. It was about how easily people forgot that humanity outranked authority. He exhaled deeply. "Specialist, if there's ever anything you need, any resource, any contact." She smiled and shook her head. "The only thing I need," she said, "is for everyone in this room to learn something from today." "What lesson?" the major asked quietly. She turned to the soldier who had choked her. He tensed, expecting anger, punishment, maybe even career-ending consequences. But she surprised him. "Step forward," she said. Reluctantly, he obeyed. She looked at him, not with hatred, not with fear, but with the same calm strength she had shown since she revealed her identity. "Tell me," she said, "why did you treat me the way you did?" His voice cracked. "We thought you were lying. Suspicious. And we're trained to act fast." "No," she said gently, "that's not the real answer." He hesitated, then whispered, "Because you looked small. And quiet." There it was. The real truth. She nodded slowly. "And what did you learn today?" His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. "That strength has nothing to do with size. Or noise. And I should have treated you like a human, before treating you like a suspect." She touched his shoulder, not to comfort him, but to acknowledge his honesty. "That's all I wanted," she said softly. The Major watched the raw exchange with something close to awe. In all his years of service, he had seen soldiers break, rebuild, and return stronger. But he had never seen humility taught this gently, yet this powerfully. "This is why your work mattered," he said quietly. "Because you saw what most of us never do." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The Major cleared her path, as if escorting a dignitary. But she paused at the door. Everyone looked up, expecting a final command, a reprimand, a dramatic reveal. Instead, she offered something else entirely. "I'm not angry," she said. "I'm tired. And I hope today makes all of you a little better at seeing people for who they might be, not just what they look like." She took a slow breath. "And remember, not everyone important wears a uniform. Not every threat looks dangerous. And not every quiet person is weak." She turned toward the two women. "Thank you," she said simply, "for being human." They hugged her, gently, carefully, as if she were made of something precious. Then she walked out of the military compound with the grace of someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. Not to the system. Not to the world. Not even to herself. Some people fight wars with weapons, some with strategies, and some fight simply by surviving what others cannot see. She had once shaped missions that changed nations, but the greatest battle she ever won was the one inside a small, harshly lit changing room, where she proved that true strength is quiet, invisible, and carried in the hearts of those who refuse to break. And sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one no one notices.